Hi, this is Damien from AtHope, and I'm an Axiological Atheist, and I'm here with a special guest. Could you go ahead and tell us your name and a little bit about you?
Hi, Damien. My name is Giuliano Testa. I'm a human. I'm a beautiful animal, essentially.
Right
Aren't
on.
we all? And I'm currently writing a magna opus that I believe is going to emancipate us from the paradigms that are currently controlling us in our society and preventing us from essentially our human destiny as outlined by our ancestors.
Wonderful.
So I have essentially a simple premise, just to interject quickly. I essentially believe that fundamentally there are three things wrong with society, how we've developed. One is the religious paradigm that no one can make sense of. That has been obviously going on for millennia. The second one is our flawed education system. And the third one is our flawed understanding of psychology and the flawed crack therapy system built thereon. And all three of those are unfortunately, shall we say, interlinked. And there is a root to the cause. So what has this actually happened? What have I done? I've taken a step back and I've said, okay, our species is sick. Our species has developed, quote unquote, a mental illness that is almost more akin to an addiction of sorts. I've then sought to a degree, reinvent psychology so that it can be applied to the species as a whole. I've understood the ailment, and in doing so, I have explored the pathology of that disease. And in exploring the pathology of the disease, I've been able to, shall we say, expose it. I've been able to explain it and apply it on a global scale. And as such, I'm currently fleshing out the cure in order to administer to the species in order to cure us from this ailment.
Yeah, I think that's some interesting ideas. And to me, it brings up the first thought for me is when I think of what's wrong with us, I think it's that, in a sense, we're emotional, social beings, and yet we try to live unemotional, unsocial lives. And I think that really is the root of some of our problems, like you were talking about a thing, because at the root of the thing, our society tells us, right, we're supposed to be caring to children, we're supposed to be loving, and yet we're supposed to be aloof. We're supposed to be not caring. When things harm, like someone even dies, we're supposed to somehow cry because we're supposed to be caring, but not cry because then it looks weak. I mean, it's bizarre. We can't, like you said, it's sick because if you achieve one portion of what you're supposed to achieve, supposedly, in our society, then you've automatically violated another part of society, contradicting itself. And so
it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation we put ourselves into.
Exactly. So you get tough, like I get tough, right? Well, then I'm cold. But then if I'm not tough, then I'm weak. So I mean, I know this is easily seen in sexism towards women, but it's not limited to that. It is actually across the board because we're against old people. When people are old, we look down on them. I mean, not me, but I'm saying in the society.
Any form of prejudice you can apply it to.
Right, or children. Oh, well, because you're young, you couldn't have any knowledge. Then we have the same academic stuff. I've had people, I'm pretty smart and have done a lot of studying, and there's academic people that I can, in a sense, best in thought, and yet they sometimes don't want to learn. I do. If I'm wrong, I want to know. I don't get really offended if I'm shown to be wrong because, man, now I can be right. I don't get this.
The day you lose your curiosity is, of course, the day you stop growing. And that is the most inhumane thing. And I think you've touched on a very important point. The fact that children are stunted. Children are patronized.
Yes, they are.
And just like our children are currently patronized, not only are we patronizing our future generation, what's actually happened is because we've patronized our ancestors so much, we're actually blind to what they have said and what they knew. And we're basically living in a world where they've been running around believing in hocus pocus, when the actual truth of the matter is, it is our society that is walking around with Santa Claus in our head, not them. And the important thing is, we need to prevent this for our children, because we're currently teaching them that, and that's going to lead to one thing. The one thing our species is trying to avoid: extinction. And quite frankly, at the moment, we are on a trajectory mentally for extinction through ignorance and abuse. And this must stop, because it's not in our nature. We didn't evolve thanks to this, and this is part of the point. There are many great thoughts that I touch on in the book from other great men, but the ideology attached to them sometimes has been, shall we say, misappropriated in society, which has had negative side effects which we ourselves have been unaware of, because it seems so natural or so profound. We've got swept up in that great thought. So essentially what I wish to do is present original thought, the crux of the matter, the hard thing to come by. What is the real commodity? It is original thought. Right. And I have gone on long enough, like you, to know that modern historians, modern scholars, modern anthropologists, and so forth, all they're doing is quoting the book they read, and that book is quoting the book they read. No one is actually saying anything different. Everybody is bound on the exact same paradigm. And I believe we're kind of hitting a bit of a crossroads in society, that if we don't really figure out what happened, we never will be able to. And so what has happened, Damien, is that currently the species has a bit of an identity crisis. And we just like anybody with an identity crisis, if we never solve that, if we don't understand who we were, where we came from, if we can't remember that, we can never grow up into the person we should be. And so that's what's happening in society. We're a very old species, but we're also a very young species. And because of our amnesia and identity crisis, we've hit a crossroads. And I have noticed that, and I intend with original thought to try and bridge that gap, so to speak, in order to remove ignorance from the masses, in order to make people like you, who wish to have a tool in your hand to literally take and say, here, that is actually what it says. Right. Think about that. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to single-handedly create a tool and a bandage and a Swiss Army knife for the mind, so to speak, that we can use, and people like you who are passionate humans, who are just interested in the truth, whatever it is, there's something more, that modern scholars have missed something, you question even the timeline in history books. This is natural. This is perfectly natural. You're perfectly correct in doing that. And what I wish to do is share my discoveries so that anyone can pick it up, feel empowered to say, wow, finally it makes sense. And with this information, I can actually make a difference. I'm going to create an entire intellectual renaissance where people have a tool to make discoveries of their own. Because let's face it, I'm not going to have time in my lifetime to read every single ancient source and, retranslate everything and figure everything out. But if I'm able to come up, shall we say, with a skeleton key that I can give you and present the world, then, well, we can all work on it simultaneously. And that's what we want. We want to end the age of rediscovery so we can, as a species, truly enter an age of discovery.
That's an interesting idea. So one of the things that you were talking about, how we get fixed, to me, it reminds me of narrative therapy and the fact that people don't realize that they constantly are saying a script in a sense. And this is a bizarre thing because we think somehow the script doesn't change. But if I asked you, are you the same as you are at 10? Of course the answer would be no. So we think that there's a continuation like the whole time somehow, when if we really thought about it, we're different at 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever. It almost like every, so often we're kind of changing. But we feel it as a mental consistency, and but it's a script that we keep saying, and it reminds me of the difference between a victim and a survivor in a sense, or a thriver. I'm a thriver. I had extreme abuse in my life, and I don't let it hurt me. In fact, I try to use it as a tool to make others better, and so I thrive from it.
I learned from a very young age what not to do, what not to be. So I learned it like that. I had to. This is what happens. Too often people go through abuse, and too many go through abuse of different natures, and it's never a competition because abuse is subjective, and abuse is abuse.
So my philosophy is that Daddy did it to me, so I did it to you. That's not good enough. That's weakness. And you would know yourself that that's not an excuse because you've obviously overcome that. So what happens too often in society is people go through abuse and they don't then have a father figure, or they don't have a mother figure. They are betrayed by their mother and father. And so the important thing is not that you can cope, because yes, you can cope and you can get through without the physical mother or father figure being there in front of you. But mentally, you need to replace that father or mother figure. So if in your own mind, you can't become that father, you can't become that mother in your own mind and set your own example and be that which was never for you, you can never heal. And so that's what happens. People go out looking for external father and mother figures because they can't be it for themselves. And once they are that for themselves, and you probably know that in order to achieve that, what you need to do is have the definition of a distinction in your mind about who you are and who you aren't. And in a way, like you said, to be grateful for it. Like I'm grateful for it. It made me who I am. It gave me the situations and circumstances in life to make those really big choices at such young ages that shouldn't be thrust upon you, but they are in the modern world because of the constraints and the paradigms and how people are. I mean, let's be honest. If therapy worked, we wouldn't have so many sick people. Children wouldn't be in the state they are. Parents wouldn't be making children who need therapy, who then repeat that cycle. So there's obviously there's something wrong. There's something wrong in the entire system there.
Well, yeah, I agree. I went to a school to be a college. To be a drug and alcohol counselor and to help kids and do group therapy and stuff and addictions therapy. But once I went to college, I started getting disheartened a little bit because I had I guess this fantasy view of counseling, that the profession was a lot better than I felt like it was once I started entering school. Like you were talking about, I started, a bunch of things I didn't like. The ethics was a big problem for me. I only had to do one ethics class. I thought that was ridiculous.
Where's the ethics?
Yeah, it's like intro to ethics. Here's ethics. Now, please be ethical. What? And also, I didn't like in the class they said pick your ethics, and I'm like, there's a lot of different ethics. Are you telling me there's no difference? A whole bunch of stuff bothered me.
I'm sorry. That's oxymoronic because the whole
agree.
Point about ethics is that which is ethical. So if you have to pick your ethics, some of them are not ethical. That bothered me deeply when they said that.
and I'm like, so some people can pick what they like, but the like wouldn't equal I know it was a bunch of things like that. They said stuff, and I was just like, no. Mm-mm. And I was thinking too, there's like, I don't remember how many, but let's just say there's 300 counseling models, right?
Yeah.
And as far as I know, not one of them starts with ethics. I thought there's an ethical problem right there. We have a supposedly, field for care, like, in a sense you should have, like for doctors, where there's in a sense, the Hippocratic oath to do no harm, in a sense. I felt that to me was one of the major things I felt lacking in counseling in general. There's not, there is a desire put forward to do no harm, but it's not, it's like a second note. It's like, I do this, and where I do that, whatever I want, I'll try not to be harmful, in a sense. I felt, whoa, it should be, I do no harm, I'm only here for you. It's just, I felt like, anyways, like you were talking about, I started to issues.
You are correct. A very recent analysis of mine, when looking at a few psychologists and looking at some of their work, and stories from other people and various studies, what I've actually found is that more psychologists than we know are technically treating themselves by treating other people.
I completely agree. Oh, totally.
They're sitting there essentially, like, for instance, the classic case that I find is most, shall we say, commonplace and easy to recognize is that addiction therapy counselors are more often than most recovering addicts. Recovering addicts that only use avoidance techniques, that themselves need to be in a room to feel superior in a Freudian method in order to simply set the example to say, well, I've been sober longer. But the truth is, they've just been on the other side of the couch for so long, they've memorized the doctor's spiel. And essentially, more often than most psychologists are underqualified. They don't have an understanding of the functionality of the subconscious mind. They are truly not psychoanalyzing and exploring options with people. They are more psychologists. They're not prescribing religion as a form of pacification and therapy. It's scary.
Well, just 1 second though. I do agree with pretty much everything you said, except for the fact I don't know if it's all. I would agree there's too many. I do think that.
I'm not saying.
Well, yeah, I do think that there are. I just wanted to make sure that I clarify for anyone watching that
I'm not saying every psychologist is doing harm. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah, I'm saying so. I do think that everything you said is correct in the fact that that stuff is going on and it is a big problem. In fact, I was shocked when I took one of the things we're talking about sexual and ethics again. One of the things they said that there's a high percentage that basically admit to sexual misconduct as counselors. So I did a report on it because I was interested, like what there should be zero. Or the crime should it should be extensively gone after. And
well, it's like a preacher. It should be zero, right? It should be less than zero.
It should be zero. These are counselors really helping people. The fact that they're violating them while they're that's just But anyway, so I did it. I wanted to do research because they didn't give like stats. They just said it was a high problem. I'm like, well, how bad? Dude, it's bad. I mean, like fucking bad. 50% of all psychologists with doctorates, maybe psychiatrists? I'll just say psychologist for now, but it might have been psychiatrist, I can't remember. 50%, right? That sounds bad. That's the best! No, that's the best. The highest doctors have the lowest. They have 50% is the lowest. Dude, it's 90% when it comes to marriage and family therapists. 90!
They're violating trust. They are not administering therapy. They're trying to treat themselves. They're not treating themselves. The entire system is unfortunately flawed because I'm not too sure. I mean, is it our understanding of the psychological model? Is it the bar is set too low, too many people are sneaking through? Or is it just the fact that even though they have a rudimentary knowledge of the working mind and can administer psychology, they aren't, because they themselves need therapy, and they're just in a position where they, as mentioned, are treating themselves through others, which from my perspective is highly unethical. You can't do that.
I agree.
That's just a wolf in sheep's clothing situation. That's the Hippocratic oath, not the Hippocratic oath.
On that point, do you know, when I was in school, right, they asked us, right, how many people here, there was like 30 people, how many people here believe that it would be a good thing for counselors to continue to go to counseling, especially with all the stuff they hear? Everyone raised their hand. Everyone raises their hand, right? So of course, who believes they should do it? Everyone. Oh yeah, definitely. And who actually would go themselves? I'm the only one that raised my hand. 30 people. And they said, really? And I thought, like you were just saying, there's the problem. They all think everyone should do it except them. Somehow, magically, with that, like you said, that shows the sickness right there. The fact that you don't think you need it, but you think everyone else does, is the problem.
Correct. You're from that perspective, you're above the psychological law. So, I mean, we need, and it's one of those situations no one is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're falling prey to their own egos, their own hubris, and we are having sick people treat humans that reach out for help. And let's be honest, we know that when you get down deep, to ask for help itself is tough. It requires courage, it requires bottling down shame and embarrassment and history and blah, 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 blah.
But some of that's culture too. We've done that.
Accomplishment. And if there's a therapist on the other end that isn't willing to congratulate you the minute they see that and you walk through the door, you're nowhere. You've walked into the wrong room then, and that's so unfortunate. That happens for everyone. And how many of them don't reach out because they know it's pointless? And the irony is that the more self-aware you are, the more educated you are, the less ignorant you are, the more self-reliant you are, the more you distrust the system because you recognize it as flawed. And therefore the system itself only treats the ignorant and keeps the ignorant sick, and then they make more sick, and then that creates the cycle. So it's, it is a big cycle, and someone has to be able to point it out, so to speak, and not just be able to rant about it, be able to give a logical
analysis and say, this is the root. This is the root. This is how it happened. This is the crack we need to fill, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, when before I started getting into atheism, and right now working on my book of Anthropology and Archaeology of the origin of religion, before that, I was writing a book because I felt we needed a counseling theory that focused first on ethics. So I called it ETA, Ethical Therapeutic Alliance. Because I thought it starts with ethic. Right. It needs to be therapeutic. That's a goal. And then the other thing is it's an alliance. It's not me better than you. It's us together working on your betterment.
I like that. ETA, estimated time of arrival.
That's right.
When do we get better? When do we heal? What's the ETA?
That's right.
I like it.
Well, I had an acronym called New Ideas, and everything N standing for something, everything standing for something, and it was about helping you get to a new progress, because the goal was to get you out. The goal is not for me. I'm into in a sense therapy that helps. I think there's 3 stages of therapy. I think everyone that first goes to therapy, like generally. The first day you go in a sense, it's basically just, in a sense, like trauma surgery. You're just stopping the blood. I mean, to me, that should be the goal, to me as a counselor. That when someone first comes in, no matter what it is, in a sense, it's a problem, because this is not going to counseling generally, especially in our society today. It's not seen as something you do as a rite of passage. It's seen as something you do only because you haven't made it well through the rite of passage or whatever. So, because of whatever issues. So, you in a sense need, to feel better or need to work on stuff. So, but that means something in a sense happened that with the disruption. So the fact though is when you go to the counseling and you're bringing in this stuff, you want something. When I feel like a lot of counseling, they just want to get, like you said about psychodynamic. Psychodynamic basically listens to you forever, and then like 5-6 months down the line, this relatively, or whatever, a longer period, they generally get to finally diagnosing you in a sense. But you're dying the whole time. And imagine if someone goes to a hospital,
There's
right?
no treatment. There's
no treatment.
Time for them to fill out their paperwork.
Right. I'm not saying maybe no treatment, but very little. The goal is not treatment. Like did you come in and see him the first time? It's just like a secretary. You're just filling in the stats in a sense. That shouldn't be that way to me. When you're coming in, it should be humanistic. Like you talk about the whole person. That's an emotional being that needs help right now. Not 10 years from now, not 6 months, now. They came in today. And so if the only thing I can leave the person with, to me, is the belief that we can do something. So to me, I'm just saying that it's that hope. It's that instilling. So I think that there should be brief, solution-focused therapy. Should be, in a sense, to me, almost like just the encapsulation when someone comes in, like the introduction thing. You take the stats. It shouldn't be clinical, because we're not dealing with the machine. We're dealing with the person, which you can.
But as you've just said, we're not dealing with a machine, and as you can see, technically, psychology has developed to the point where the highest form of psychology is finding out the chemical combination to medicate you up.
Yeah.
In order physically to treat it like a machine.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm not saying that medication isn't needed for extreme cases in certain things here or there. Okay, fine. Medication is needed for certain illnesses of the body, of the mind, or whatever. Sure. But, when you have general practitioners trying to give you a antidepressant when you go in there with a sprained ankle, you start kind of thinking, well, who can I trust? I've got to go home and be my own doctor. And this is the point. We need to educate people. People need to have an understanding of how their own mind works prior to it breaking.
Well, and as
we
far
don't
as taking
have that,
Well, as far as taking medicine, my feeling is like that. Even if they say that someone is bipolar or whatever, and they need medicine, I don't think that means you don't need therapy. I don't think that changed the therapy issue in any way. In other words, the medication to me is not in a sense, a thing that bypasses the need for the emotional being to express emotions. The drugs don't stop that internal person.
But the drugs you take in your own time, like you said, when they come into your office and they're right in front of you, they need help now.
Mm-hmm.
They need help now. They need to know something. They need to, why they're there. They're there because they're out of control. They're there because control has been removed from them. They're there because they're powerless. They're there because they have too much power and they're out of control. They need that addressing there and then. And like you said, therapy becomes so convoluted from the therapist's perspective. It's almost, once again, just about the paperwork, finding out what the diagnosis is for your own subjective confidence, as opposed to finding a human way to treat the person. And that isn't to treat them with undying sympathy. We don't need to be everybody's mommy or everybody's daddy, but there needs to be a more human, ethical, logical way to treat people. And, the psychology element is one discussion. But my first work essentially is there to focus on what has created so many mental illnesses in our society. Why is it that our society we should all function that every day we should get more intelligent, every day our memory should not degrade, our memory should improve, we should know more, we should all grow to be the wise men and women that, is the stereotypical tale. We should all do that. But for some reason in our society, more than 50% of us lose our minds in old age. It's called dementia, it's called this, it's called that. But when you look at it, the logic says that we're living in a society where we believe we have the longer lifespans than our ancestors, but we're not as healthy. We're just kept alive via medication. And other than that, we don't grow old and wise. We grow old, we forget, we go insane. And it's a very common thing. Now, I don't remember I don't remember reading in any ancient civilization's tales that, watch out, after the age of so-and-so, everyone in society goes loopy, and that's common knowledge for the past 500,000 years. It's just not so. So when you think of that, hold on, something's happened. Something's happened in the human psyche that is actually physically making people ill during their life. It's making them confused, convoluted, juxtaposed. It's making their behaviors idiosyncratic. They can't understand or recognize themselves. They can't reach out to another human being and say hello. They can't see another human being. They're not valuing their time. They're not taking the time. And as such, they're getting not older and wiser. We're actually going backwards in time. We're not becoming old, wise men. We're not becoming old, wise women. This doesn't make sense. We should live longer than ever. We should all have white beards down to our toenails by now. But we don't. We're all going insane and forgetting how to shave, so to speak. And there's a problem in society. And I think that there is a cure. I believe that the three fundamental things I mentioned earlier on, the religious paradigm, the flawed education system, and the flawed therapy sessions system, I believe that is the crux of the matter that has essentially contributed to this latent sickness in the human mind. And at some point in time, because when we get older, there's just so much convoluted information in our mind that it just, something pops. And I intend to cure that. I intend to expose how that has happened and cure that. And
by the way, what's the name of your book? You just said the book. Do you have a name for it?
The title is Paradigms Lost.
Right on.
Paradigms Lost. And that is, of course, about all the paradigms that I break, so to speak, within there, opening our eyes to look at ancient civilizations. I present all my discoveries. I present, shall we say, the skeleton key. I present how to use the blueprint I've invented, so to speak. And as such, it's about removing the paradigms that hold us now, exposing it for future generations so that they themselves can look out for other paradigms so that they themselves are not prey to what we had to go through. So society never hits a juncture where we get confused again. So, we basically, to quote a couple of lines out of my book, we have as a species gone off trajectory evolutionary. And I intend to show how and why that has happened and to correct that. And so when we see that mechanism, future generations know how to recognize it, so we never need to fall prey to that again. So our evolutionary trajectory can keep on its usual momentum, shall we say. And I'm also having the mind of it being completely approachable for anyone, whether you are a scholar, whether you are a layman, whether you are an armchair anthropologist, whether you're a single mother, whether you're a child, whether you're looking for a textbook. This is something that is approachable for all of us, that all of us need. And as mentioned, it's also a tool of peace that people like you can have in your hand to fight the good fight, so to speak, you know?
Right on. Well, do you want to end it now that we can do another talk again?
Cool. Yeah, let's do that. Unfortunately, I just had a call come in.
Oh, right on. That works.
Let's start another one.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Absolute pleasure, Damien. Likewise.
Right on. Bye, everybody.